بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I praise Allah, I thank Allah, I ask Allah to send countless blessings and salutations on Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family and his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah to grant us the sincere intentions. Allah. I was thinking this morning, before we began, it was the habit of our teachers. They always, before we would start the class, they would remind us of some beneficial things. And I was thinking of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us as I was listening to the class of Sayyidi Abdul Rahman when he was teaching the book Risalat Jamia in the class at 6 before this class this morning. And as I was listening to his explanation on the section of Az-Zakah, I realized that we have so much benefit from our teachers, from those who acquire the knowledge and now are teaching and spreading the knowledge. We have our books available, people that can explain the books. We have our chains of narrations. We have connections to trustworthy scholars that can convey. And now what I realize is that a lot of excuses that we had before have been lifted. You know, it was a time when someone can honestly say, there's nowhere for me to learn. Or it is extremely difficult for me to learn. But with this pandemic, all the doors of access seem to just be wide open. And oftentimes in calamity, there are mercies from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are not perceived by many. In the midst of the calamity, there is rahmat, there is mercies from Allah. So while yes, there is this pandemic, this coronavirus going around, people are dying, people are sick, people have lost their income, you know, and many other things that are happening. But in the same time, the access of learning the religion, connecting to teachers, meeting fellow Muslims that you would have never met ever, making bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood, reviewing, supporting one another. In all of these matters, you see the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And often I think that we need to constantly be in a state of gratitude for the favors that Allah has given us. And we should proclaim them and think about them all the time so that we are mindful of the blessing. May Allah grant him afiyah, insha'Allah. May Allah grant him afiyah. But you should remind yourself of that. Oftentimes we take all these blessings for granted and we don't thank Allah enough for what Allah has given us, and then show our gratitude by using those blessings for what Allah created them for. So it's just a reminder, be grateful. The believer should always be in a state of shukr. Should always be in the state of gratitude and thankfulness. We say, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. We praise and thank Allah in every condition. In every condition. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah. Now, let us begin. So we reached up to page number 52, and we talked about the Arkan al-Salah, the integrals of the prayer. And we mentioned, according to the school of Imam al-Shafi'i, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the integrals are 17. And these integrals are the obligatory parts of the prayer. Meaning, if one prayed just doing these obligatory integrals, the prayer would be valid. And what is other than it is sunnah or recommended matters that would increase one's reward. But as for what is necessary to fulfill the prayer, it is what was mentioned in these 17 integrals. Inshallah, we'll read some cases related to the one who makes mistakes in the prayer and how to correct those mistakes. Inshallah, let us begin with Al-Fatiha to the soul of Al-Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir. Al-Fatiha. Yes, let us begin, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, the 17th, the order. If he deliberately omits it, like by prostrating before bowing, the prayer is invalidated. If he forgets and omits the bowing, for example, he returns to it immediately upon remembering it, unless he is performing its like or has performed its like as well as subsequent actions. In that case, he completes his prayer cycle with it, i.e., the like suffices him for what was omitted, and the one he forgot is nullified, i.e., everything between that was omitted and the performed likeness is nullified. So he completes what remains of the prayer cycle in which he remembered, performs the prayer cycles that he would still need to perform had he not remembered, and makes up whatever is missing from his prayer due to the nullifications. Through this, he performs a prayer cycle.
So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, mentions a tartib, that the last integral of those 17 integrals is to do all of those obligatory integrals in that order as they were mentioned. So what happens in the case of someone who forgets or someone who intentionally performs those integrals out of order? So let's take the second case first. The one who intentionally performs any of these integrals out of the order in which they are, his prayer is invalidated. So for instance, if one performed sujood before one performs ruku'. So sujood is the prostration. So if one recited Al-Fatiha, for example, and then intentionally went from Al-Fatiha to Qiyam, that's the position you recite Al-Fatiha, standing, to directly to prostration without performing the bowing before it, one's prayer is invalidated. So this is the case. Or any of the integrals, if one performs it before its due order and leaves out what precedes it in order, then one's prayer is invalidated. Then another case is, what about the one who forgets? So this was intentional. So to intentionally do it invalidates the prayer, and meaning one has to pray that prayer over. If one unintentionally performs them out of order, meaning one forgets. For instance, one goes from standing to bowing forgetfully. So one leaves out an integral or two integrals, and then one is praying, one performs sujood, one sits up, one performs another prostration, for example, or what is less than that. And one remembers, while one is in sujood, I forgot to perform al-ruku. What does one do? One immediately stands up and goes to the position of al-ruku, and then one completes the prayer as normal. So that's the first case. So this is one way. The second case is if the person forgets an integral, like a ruku, as we mentioned, the bowing, and he doesn't recall that he missed it until the next rak'ah, and he comes to that position in the next rak'ah or what is after it. So for instance, in the first rak'ah, he goes from qiyam to sujood, and he prostration, then he sits up, then he prostrates, then he stands up, and he recites Al-Fatiha, and he recites another surah, for instance, and he goes to ruku, and then at that second rak'ah, he recalls the ruku, while in ruku, he remembers that he forgot to perform the ruku in the first rak'ah. Or he goes to that ruku, he stands up in i'tidal, and he remembers that I didn't perform the previous ruku. Or he goes to sujood, and I didn't remember so that's what's after. I didn't remember the ruku in the first rak'ah. He would cancel the first rak'ah as if it didn't occur, and he would start from that point as the first rak'ah, and he would make an additional rak'ah at the end. So in form, he would have performed 5 rak'ah, but the first rak'ah, because it was missing the ruku and the i'tidal, for instance, the standing back up, so it would be canceled as if he never performed it, and he would make an additional rak'ah to complete the prayer. Is this clear? Any questions about this case? But it's very essential because it relates to mistakes in the prayer, so that one knows what to do when one makes the mistake in the prayer. Is this clear? These two cases. Well, there's actually 3 cases. The case of the one who done it intentionally, his prayer is invalidated. The case of the one who did it forgetfully, but remembers before reaching that integral in the next rak'ah, and the case of the one who did it unintentionally, but he didn't remember until he reached that Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, that integral in the succeeding rak'ah or what is after it. It's clear. MashaAllah. There's going to be more details to this case, right? later in the next book when we discuss some issues, but not in this book. For right now, we're concerned with making sure that the obligatory parts of the prayer are well known and how to perform them. Naam, go ahead.
Congressional and Friday prayers.
So there are faslun fil jama'ati wal jumu'ah. This is the section, because we talked about praying alone. Now this section talks about the rules related to praying in al-jama'ah, to praying in congregation, right? Yeah, the name for that mistake is I forgot. How you like that, Muti? Allah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So al-jama'ah, the congregational prayer. And since we're talking about praying together, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that salatul jama'ah ta'dilu salatu fadhi bi 25 daraja. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in the hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari, praying in congregation is 25 degrees equals 25 degrees above praying alone. So the reward, in other words, the reward of praying in jama'ah is 25, and in another narration, 27 times more the reward, right? In elevation, in status. So one should always pray in congregation. The believer who is a pious person should never pray alone except that they find no one else to pray with. Either one is in one's home or one is in the masjid. One should always pray in jama'ah, right? To the point that some of the pious people, they used to, if they miss the jama'ah, the congregational prayer, they would pray that prayer over 25 times. Some of the pious, they used to do that. If they missed the jama'ah salah, the congregational prayer, they would pray that prayer over. They would pray the regular prayer, but they would pray it again 25 times to try to compensate for that loss. This is not obligatory, but this was out of their scrupulousness and losing reward. May Allah make us among the pious. And since you pray in congregation, there is also al-jumu'ah, which is the congregational Friday prayer. Now, so the author is going to talk about al-jama'ah, the congregational prayer first. Now,
Praying in a congregation is a communal obligation for males who are free, resident, adults of sound mind, and who lack an excuse.
now, so the congregational prayer, al-jama'ah, is a communal obligation, which is called fard Kifaayah. So let me put these two things. You have two types of obligation. You have fard ayn and fard Kifaayah. Right? So the fard ayn, and this is in terms of obligations. The fard ayn is the individual obligation, which means that one has to perform it and no one else can do it for you. It is your individual obligation, like the 5 prayers throughout the day and night, right? That is fard ayn. So there are, like learning the knowledge of the religion, the personal, obligatory knowledge of the religion is fard ayn ala kulli mukallaf. It is a personal obligation on every morally responsible individual. Like learning the correct belief in Allah. Learning the correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fard ayn. You cannot be in a state of shak, doubt, about the essential beliefs in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like it's fard ayn. It is a personal obligation on every morally responsible individual to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists without time, without place, without direction, without being a body. This is a personal obligation. The one who does not know this information, at minimum, is sinful, depending his excuse. Maybe he is treated like a new Muslim and he didn't know the beliefs, so he has to learn. So this is a new Muslim, right? Who never met Muslims or who never was exposed to Islamic belief, so he didn't know, right? So he must learn. That's at minimum, he's sinful for not knowing the proper belief. At the worst case, he is a disbeliever. And this is serious, and because we're talking about that personal obligation. The one who believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in a direction or a location or is attributed with a body or attributes that necessitate being a created entity is a disbeliever, even if he thinks he's a Muslim. This is a serious issue. We cannot have invalid beliefs just because on the form. This is an obligation. It is the first obligation on the morally responsible individual as fard ayn, as a personal obligation. This idea that belief, the correct belief, does not matter is a fallacy. For the one who believes that prayer is more important than having the proper belief has misunderstood Islam, even if they were a Muslim for 60 years or 70 years or 40 or 50 years. You cannot believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in a location. Allah is not in heaven. Allah is not up in the skies. We are not Christians and Jews. We are Muslims. Allah mawjudun bila makan. Allah exists without a place. Don't teach your children that Allah is in heaven, trying to make the religion simple. This is blasphemous. Don't teach your children that. Teach them Allah exists without a place. Teach them that Allah is not like his creation. Teach them that Allah does not move or rest or have bodies. They're not unintelligent. Teach them properly. Teach them the right belief. Teach them correctly. Okay, with that being said, don't teach your children that Allah got hands and feet and eyes and a face and he rests. Wal-iyadhu billah. We're not Christians and we're not Jews. We are Muslims. Muslims don't believe that about Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So that is the personal obligation. The second is fard Kifaayah. So that is a communal obligation. What does that mean? That means that means that it is an obligation on some Muslims, some of the morally responsible individual, to fulfill. And if some fulfill it, the others are relieved of the responsibility. But if no one does it, then everyone is sinful in that area, in that place. That is Fard Kifaayah. Allah. So, the author mentions that al-jama'ah is Fard Kifaayah, on whom al-dhukur, males, so the congregational prayer is not an obligation on the women, right? And we're talking about in performing this congregational prayer in a place in the Masjid where it's well known that people would know it's being performed. And those people who are residents, al-mukimun, so not the traveler, the one who is a resident who lives in that area, al-balighun, those who are pubescent, al-uqala, meaning those who are sane, and those who don't have an excuse. So that is who is obligated to perform Salatul Jama'ah. Others, they can perform Salatul Jama'ah, but it's not an obligation upon them as a communal to fulfill that communal obligation. Now,
For Friday prayer, it is a personal obligation for them, i.e., the aforementioned, when there are 40 of them and they are responsible, permanently residing in structures. It is not obligatory for individuals residing in tents, and it is an obligation upon whoever intends to stay with them, i.e., the aforementioned, who are required to perform it, for at least 4 complete days, i.e., not including the days of arrival and departure, and upon whoever would be reached, potentially, not actually, by a call performed by a strong-voiced person standing at the edge adjacent to its land, i.e., where the Friday prayer is being held.
so here, the Jama'ah, the congregation, is obligatory in Jumu'ah. So you have to perform Salatul Jumu'ah, the Friday prayer, in Jama'ah, in congregation. That is Fard Ain upon those people, because we said the regular Jama'ah is Fard Kifaayah, right? And the Jama'ah in the Jumu'ah, so the Jumu'ah itself is Fard Ain. And to perform Jumu'ah, it must be in Jama'ah. So that is Fard Ain upon whom, upon those people that was mentioned, that is Fard Kifaayah to perform Al-Jama'ah. What are the conditions for that to be fulfilled? When they are 40, in the Shafi'i school, the minimum number of males in Jumu'ah for the validity are 40. So in the Shafi'i school, we wait until we have 40 male, free, pubescent, sane individuals who are mukallaf, we mentioned that, so they cannot count the children. Mustawtinin, and they are permanent residents, meaning they plan on dying in that place, right? They plan on dying in that place. So they only leave it to travel or for some need, and then they return. So they are residents, permanent residents of that place. When they are 40, then that is Fard Ain on them to perform Al-Jumu'ah. In other madhahib, the numbers are less. In other schools, the numbers are less. And some Shafi'i scholars, they mention, among them Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habshi, that even if it was less than that, and they didn't have those numbers, the people should perform Jumu'ah with less than those numbers, according to other scholars, so that Jumu'ah would be fulfilled. Now, and that must be in buildings. So they're in the regular city. They're not in the campground or in the desert where there's nothing but tents. So that's for the obligation of Jama'ah in Jumu'ah and Al-Jumu'ah itself. And it is also, so that's those who are in the city. Okay, what about those who are not in this place, in that particular city where the Jumu'ah is held? If that person is a traveler, but he plans on staying in that place for 4 complete days, besides the day of entry and the day of exit. So you don't count the day he comes, and you don't count the day the person is leaving. But if they stay there 4 days, complete days, besides the day of exit and entry, then they are considered a resident. And they must perform al-Jumu'ah, right? They must perform al-Jumu'ah as an obligation because they are considered a resident at that point. Also, the person who lives close to that city, where if a person with a strong voice stood on the edge of the adjacent city and called out the adhan, for example, one could hear it under normal circumstances. So if this is the one edge of the city, this is the border of the city, right? And the Jummah is on this side of the city, and the one comes to the edge of that city, not actually, if a person with a strong voice came to the edge of that city and called the adhan, everyone on this side of the next town who could hear that is obligated to go to al-Jumu'ah. Is this clear? Allah. Any questions about what I just mentioned? Allah. Allah. I'm going to test you on these rules, so please make sure it's clear. Right? We're going to be tested. Only give a more detail on what you don't understand. If you understand the case, that's all I'm interested in. Details will come when we study more books. Keep in mind, this is one level. We're going to study another book. Then we're going to study another book. And each book is going to build on the previous book, right? And we're going to read these books multiple times, not just once. Remember, we said, whoever has not read a book at least 3 times, they have never read the book with the teacher, right? So we're going to review and review. So this is not the first time you're going to hear the case. And you're going to need to review for the rest of your life. I remember in my 20s, I used to teach this from my mind. No looking at a book. I can't do that anymore. I'm getting old. Subhanallah. I remember those days. I used to teach without a book, with details. I was in my 20s. I think I still could do it when I got to my mid-30s. But now that I'm half a century, can't do it no more. Even if I try, my mind just don't hold things like that. Subhanallah. So youth, it is a blessing. Preserve your youth. You're going to get old and you're not going to be able to do the same things. Okay, go ahead.
Its conditions, i.e. for Friday prayer, are as follows.
So remember, we're back to those things, we said that you have shurut, right? Arkan and Mubtilaat, right? So you have shurut, la ilaha illallah. You have shurut, arkan, and mubtilaat. We talked about the shurut of al-wudu and al-ghusl, al-tahara. We talked about the arkan of wudu. We talked about the mubtilaat of wudu and al-ghusl. Remember all of these things. They're going to come back. La, not 3 days, 4 days, Habibi. 1 day in and out, no obligation. 1 day plus 3 days, you're obligated. No, 4 days, complete 4 days. Not 3, 4. 1 day plus 3 days, I guess that's what you mean. And so just say the day of entry, you don't count. So if I come in on Monday, we don't count Monday. Complete Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I leave Saturday, then I'm obligated. So that Friday, I got to perform al-Jumu'ah, right? Because I'm not leaving till Saturday or Sunday, right? Greater than 3. You and your fancy numbers. Why don't you just say what I said? I love Farouk. MashaAllah. One day when this pandemic is over and we can get together, we're really going to enjoy each other's company. Because sometimes on these platforms, you can't see the love between people. That's one thing that's missing in classes, right? When you sit with a person, you see the love. So the words that may sound rough coming from on the thing or when someone types, but when you see it, you see the love, you see that, mashallah, a beautiful thing. Nani's threatening me. La ilaha illallah. Okay. So remember, Farouk, I'm an Ansar Ranger. Be careful. Nah, let me stop. Just having a little fun. So we said there are shurut, arkan, and mubtilaat, right? There are conditions integral. Excuse me 1 second. 1 second. Give me 1 second. Barakallahu bikum. So we said the shurut, arkan, and mubtilaat. The conditions, the arkan, and the mubtilaat. So we mentioned that for al-wudu, for al-ghusl, for al-tayammum, for al-istinja. We mentioned it for removing al-najasa. We mentioned Allahumma. And we mentioned it for the prayer of the regular prayer, the 5 prayers, right? Now the author is going to talk about al-Jumu'ah. So what are shurut of Jumu'ah? What are the conditions for the validity of al-Jumu'ah? So you cannot just perform Jumu'ah any old kind of way. There are conditions that must be met before it begins in a valid manner. Now, go ahead.
Number 1, taking place during the time of noon prayer.
So waqtu dhuhr. So you can have to ensure that the time of dhuhr enters, right? Because the time of al-jumu'ah, salatul jumu'ah, is at the time of a dhuhr. So one should know when is the time of a dhuhr. So I'll ask, when is the time of a dhuhr? I'll wait, I'll patiently wait. When is the time of a dhuhr? See, this is where the disadvantage comes. We can't talk. But you can type, so you can go fast, inshallah. When is the time of a dhuhr? I'll wait. And we can make istighfar while we're waiting. Astaghfirullah al-azim wa atubu ilayh. Allah. Your shadow plus some. Farouk, that's not it. Okay, this is the beginning. When the sun begins to decline westward from its zenith. So that's the beginning. Tayyib, and when does it end? And don't say at Salatul Asr. So when does Dhuhr end? So a Dhuhr starts when the sun moves westward from the middle of the sky, right? So when the sun is at its zenith, which is the middle of the sky, when it moves westward, right? Now y'all need to review. I'm looking at these answers and none of them are right. Come on. More clear. They're close, but they're not more precise. When the sun moves westward from its zenith, when the sun moves westward from its zenith. So at the zenith, you don't perform the prayer. That's not the time of dhuhr. When the sun moves westward from the zenith, then that is the time of dhuhr. That's the beginning of dhuhr. When does it end? We need to review, so we should go back to the times of prayer. The first issue that the author mentioned, you should never need. I'm not saying you can't use. You should never need to use a prayer calendar or have to Google to know when Salat come in. You should know the times of prayer without that. You've studied. You should know it well. You shouldn't need to know those times of prayer. You shouldn't have to use them. So when Abu Yasin, not when the shadow is twice its length. No. MashaAllah. Good. Right here. So Dhuhr ends when the length of the shadow of an object becomes equal to the length of the object, plus the length of the shadow of the same object when the sun was at its zenith. MashaAllah. Isa, that expression is not correct. You're close, but it's not when the time of the decline, that's dhuhr, the time when the sun was at its zenith. Allah. No. We got to review. I want everyone, quickly, Sister Crystal. Sorry. Second time I've done it, huh? It is meant for you to be known. Allah. Let us go back quickly. Hold the page there. on page 54. Mark that. Let us go back to page 34, inshallah. So page 34, everyone go back to page 34. In repeating, there is a benefit. If you have questions, you can put them down about what we talked about. So the author mentioned among what is obligatory are 5 prayers during the day and night. Number 1, so read, inshallah.
Number 1, noon prayer. Its time is from when the sun passes the zenith, i.e., declines from the middle of the sky towards the west, until the shadow of every object is the same length as the object minus its shadow when it, i.e., the sun, is at its highest point in the sky.
So here, read it one more time.
Noon prayer. Its time is from when the sun passes the zenith, i.e., declines from the middle of the sky towards the west.
Right, so that's the beginning. Excuse me. Allah, Ya Rab. So the beginning is when the sun moves westward from La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Remember, I'm going to pause for a minute. Let me come back to that 1 second. Remember, we are following the Shafi'i school. We are learning the Shafi'i school. So don't put an answer that doesn't relate to the Shafi'i school. You're going to confuse people. So just as a reminder, don't tell me what the school is in an Hanafi school or Maliki school or Hanbali school. The lesson is not according to those schools. The lesson is according to the school of Shafi'i, right? And the lesson is about what is obligatory. So don't tell me issues of details. I'm not impressed, right? Not at all. Not a little bit. I don't want to know how much you think you know. I want to know how much you really know. That's related to your obligations. Because a lot of times we know a lot of details and we don't know our obligations. We can quote Quran and we can quote Hadith and we think Allah is in heaven. I don't know how you quote Quran and Hadith and end up with that. So I'm not impressed. Don't try to impress. Tell me the obligation. Make sure you understand the obligation. Once you understand the obligation, then give me all those fancy details later. I am not impressed in the least. You want to impress, make sure you know your obligatory knowledge. Then you are impressive. Not to me, not to others, to Allah. But if you got all these extra details and you don't know your obligations, La ilaha illallah, you are sinful. So be careful. And that's not a censoring, it's a reminder. I repeat, it's not a censoring. It's not a criticizing. It's a reminder. That's all it is a reminder. I love you. Wallahi, I love you. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't tell you. I would just keep it going and let everyone be all fancy. No. I love you. I love myself. I learned the best for us. We can't keep going on not knowing our religion. We have to fix it. And we can't make excuses why we don't learn. Everything is provided for us. We have to do it. So please keep in mind, we're studying the Shafi'i school. We have a book. The information that you need to preserve is in the book. You have the teacher clarifying the terms in the book. That's it. I'm just clarifying the terms, making sure you understand it correctly. Making sure you don't misunderstand it because books don't talk, right? Books don't say you misunderstand. This is a printing mistake. You need a living teacher to do that, right? That's the purpose. There's going to come, trust me, if you stick around long enough, There's going to come a time where there are going to be so many details you're going to have a headache. That time is coming if you stick around. This ain't the time for that right now. There's going to come a time where all these cases, we're going to talk about the dalil, we're going to talk about usul al-fiqh, we're going to talk about usul al-hadith, we're going to talk about tafsir of ayat, we're going to be talking about the spiritual matters related to all this. It's a lot more details. But right now, no need to talk about those details if we don't got the obligation correct. So keep that in mind. I would suggest that you memorize the book. That's my suggestion to you. It is a summary, and summaries are meant to be memorized. My suggestion is that you take the time and memorize the book to the best of your ability. And if you cannot memorize, you read over and over and over and over and over till it becomes like second nature. Right? Take one section and read it 10 times. Right? So that the masail, the cases, stick in your mind. Right? Tell you. And keep in mind, I love you. It's not a criticism. It's a reminder. Barakallahu bikum. So the beginning of the time of dhuhr, and why are we mentioning this case? Rook is so funny. Why are we mentioning this case? Let's see if you're following. Why are we mentioning this at all? This case about the time of dhuhr. Good. Jumu'ah must be performed at the dhuhr time. That's why we mentioned the time. I forgot now. MashaAllah. Funny guy. Right, because you got to know when is a condition for the validity of Jumu'ah that is performed in the time of dhuhr. If you don't know the time of dhuhr, you can't fulfill the condition. Right? You cannot perform the Jumu'ah if you don't know when the time of dhuhr is. It's not valid. So you got to know the time of dhuhr so you know when to perform al-Jumu'ah, right? So the dhuhr, noon time, the dhuhr prayer comes in when the sun moves westward from the middle of the sky. Not when the sun is in the middle of the sky, when it moves westward from the middle of the sky. That's the beginning of dhuhr. And the end, go ahead.
I.e. declines from the middle of the sky towards the west, until the shadow of every object is the same length as the object minus its shadow when it, i.e. the sun, is at its highest point in the sky.
Tell you. So now it lasts until the length of an object, the length of the shadow of an object is equal to the object in addition to the length of the shadow cast on that object when the sun was at its zenith. So when the sun is at its highest point, the zenith, one takes an object, a stick for instance, say this spoon as example, and one puts it in the ground and one measures the shadow, which is the smallest that shadow would be. When the shadow of the spoon becomes equal to the length of the spoon, in addition, plus the length of the shadow on the spoon when it was at its zenith, then that is, no, it can be said both ways. Both ways. Is this how you express it? So you understand. I'll explain it when saying minus. So for instance, the shadow of the object is, the object itself, say is 12 inches, right? At the sun's zenith, it casts a shadow of 2 inches. When the sun is at its highest point, the shadow on the 12-inch object is 2 inches. So you record that 2 inches. When the shadow of the object is 14 inches, that is the time that Dhuhr ends. The 12 inches of the length of the object, in addition to the 2 inches that was on the sun when was on the object of the shadow of the object when the sun was at its zenith. You could turn it the other way, and you could say when the shadow of the object is equal to its length minus the length of the shadow when the sun was at its zenith. It's the same thing, right? So it's the same. You can word it either way, and it means the same thing. Is that clear? Is that clear? All right, don't waste, Sister Fatima. Don't concentrate on that case right now. Farouk drives with his car going all over the road. Don't follow him. You might get, he can get back on the road. He might take you somewhere and you can't get back. Say, so just stick to the case. We'll come to your case, inshallah. Farouk has an all-terrain vehicle. He doesn't drive a regular car. I'm messing with him. Is that clear? Is this case clear? Oh, that was Free Slave. I'm sorry, Farouk. I apologize. That was Free Slave who brought that question up. It's between you and Free Slave, man. I got to keep a tab on you guys, man. Okay. Tayyib, it's clear, right? I had something in mind. I'm sorry that my thing blocked all your stuff out. So you got to put all your questions back. MashaAllah. All your stuff went away. All right, so the issue is clear. All right, so we'll come back to that tomorrow. We got a Dhuhr. I need all of you to review the 5 times of the prayer. Here was my question. Quickly, it is a question for you. What hadith is used as an evidence, and I mentioned it to you, to know the times of prayer? I mentioned the hadith about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said about knowing the way to determine the times of the prayer. What is that hadith? Who remembers it? Question, come on. I expect the fast typers to do that. What is the hadith? I mentioned it. Look in your notes. Nope. Nope. Okay, come on. What is the hadith that when we mentioned those 5 prayers, I mentioned the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the rank of the one who has a way to determine these 5 prayers. I'm trying not to give you the hadith. No answers? Come on. You come to class, you should have a notebook. You should write notes. You should memorize. Can I have a pass? Bathroom pass. I said the corona ain't stopped you from cracking jokes, huh? MashaAllah. No. I said the times of the prayer. MashaAllah. There you go. Bam. Oh, wait a minute. That's not it. MashaAllah. Verily, among the best servants of Allah are those who observe the sun, the moon, the stars, and the shadows for the remembrance of Allah. Allah. Yeah, there you go. Inna khiyara ibadillah alladhina yarauna ash-shamsa wal-qamara wa adhilla wa fi riwaya wan-nujum li dhikrillah. Yes, see, it was there. See, someone got their notes. We mentioned this hadith when we were talking about the 5 prayers. So how do you know it? You know the stars, the sun, the moons, you know all those things. MashaAllah. So don't say it wasn't mentioned. It was mentioned. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Good. So let's review. Let's review. Fil i'ada ifada. The more you repeat, there is a benefit. Really, 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 let's study. This is obligatory knowledge. You have to know these things. You don't have an excuse. You have to learn these things. They are obligatory. Fard ayn upon you. You are mukallaf. You are morally responsible. You are accountable. You must know these things. You know, these are the basics. The basics is not ignorance. The basics is knowledge. Right? Al-jahlu bid-deen, ignorance of the religion, is not basic. It's sinful. MashaAllah, barakallahu feek. If anyone needs help learning to read Arabic, you can DM me and I can try to help. MashaAllah, may Allah reward you. For the brothers, the sisters don't DM him. Let the brothers do that. I have a sister, MashaAllah, who's an excellent Arabic teacher. But she charges. I mean, alhamdulillah, she got to make a living, right? For any sister who wants to learn Arabic from the beginning and basics, or you're not that advanced and you need help, send your info for the females Arabic class and I'll connect you with this sister, right? She's a very good teacher. Send it to info at MMACINC. I gotta give a stop. Okay. That's for the sisters. So make sure there's a sister and it's for the Arabic class. She will charge a fee. I'm working. If I can get all y'all together, I can put you in one class and I can reduce the fee, right? Or maybe 2 classes, depends if it's too many people. But it's for women only, and I already got her agreement to do it on the weekend. I mean, she'll work out with you, but she's an excellent teacher. And inshallah, so for those sisters, and I suggest that if you have the desire that you do it. For the brothers, go to Free Slave and get started. And inshallah, we'll help each other. Yeah, that's something you can work out with him. People can learn Arabic. I wish I told you, brothers and sisters, my people, we need to pay teachers. If you want classes that are regular, consistent, you need to pay. I have teachers that will do it, but I got to pay them. They're not going to be able to do free stuff. It don't got to be expensive, but people got to live. You know what I mean? You want teachers, you got to pay for that. Some you're going to get free. This is obligatory knowledge. It's free, but these other things, they cost money. Donate. We're getting ready to build, and I hope to have it up next week. We're going to have an Islamic education fund where we pay teachers and students that are advanced in their studies to help them become teachers. And we spend money in that. And I want you to help me. Seriously. I talked to, remember last week, I think it was on the round table, I mentioned that I know teachers right now. If I had the money, I could hire them full time. They would leave what they're doing and they would come work with us. But I can't pay them. I can't. So we need your help. So I'm going to, you can support and donate, right? But that's what I want to do. I'm serious. If you help me, it will be free for you because you donated, right? And it won't be, some people can't afford, they don't got money, especially in this time. But some of us do. Let us all help. And we will have classes in every Islamic sciences if I can do it. For us, by us, done by us. It's doable, it's available, right? But we need your help. We need your help. And I'll do whatever I can. I mean, I wish I could move my camera and you can see how many books I have around me preparing different lessons and classes. But it's hard. And I don't expect everyone to do all this stuff. My brother, he said something to me the other day. He's not a Muslim. May Allah guide him to Islam. It wasn't the other day. It was a little while ago. We talk all the time. And he said to me, he said, I don't know if you realize how hard it is doing what you do. You do it. He said, but it's very difficult to maintain this stuff. It's very difficult. It's a job. You got to prepare. You got to make notes. You got to check. That's a job in and of itself. Besides running the community and doing all other stuff you do. He said it's difficult. Don't think everyone can do that. But since everyone can do that, and Allah bless those who can, we need to facilitate to make it easy for others to do it. And I talked to some people, I won't mention their name. I said, if I had a salary for you, would you come? He said that, and they went, oh, Imam, for you, there's nothing I wouldn't do. I know, but I need you to be consistent. I need you to do regular classes. I need you to teach books. I don't need you to just do lectures. I need to teach books in different sciences. If you had the pay, I'm there. I'm there anyway, but I know I'm there anyone means when I can. No, we need consistency, regular classes. If you pay them, and you should, because you're going to benefit and others are going to benefit. So I'm just mentioning this to you in the meanwhile. So the sister is going to do it, but inshallah, help me. I want to help you. I want to make it, because here's the point. I want to make it. I was listening to something. I will share some. Please, if you got to go. I want to tell you a story. I was watching something yesterday. And please, those who are not African American, just listen to me and don't think I'm talking to you, right? In a sense of we love all of us, right? We're Muslim. But there is a lack of traditionally trained Sunni, African-American, really Ahl Sunnah teachers. We have a serious lack of that. And that lack of teachers has opened the door for many of our people to become default Wahhabi. And I don't say it with any apology. And many of our African-American Muslim people have become default Wahhabi, have had bad belief because we don't have traditional African-American teachers. And there are others who are traditionally trained, but they don't focus on the needs and the concerns of African-American people. They don't. I know it firsthand, and I'm a teacher. So I'm not talking about anything that I don't know. I sit in the circles with those big teachers. They have no concern for the African-American people. They don't. That doesn't say they don't love them. They don't make dua for them, but they're not going to do anything for them. This is real. And I'm not, hey, do your job. I don't blame them for that. Do your job. Work on your people. Likewise, African-American people need to work on their people. This is real, right? So you need an environment, right, with a methodology, with books, with a teacher, and with students. And I mentioned it, you need 5 things that are integrals, that are Arkan of knowledge. You need a student, you need a teacher, you need a methodology, you need a book, and you need an environment that's suitable, right? This is real stuff, right? Unfortunately, most of the teachers among us in African America are either complete Wahhabi or default Wahhabi. This is a crisis. Seriously, I'm not joking. And it hurts because in the same time, you realize that's why we staying in the state of knowledge we in. It's rehashing the same nonsense over and over again, right? And it's a crisis. But what are we doing about the crisis? We're not facilitating the route for people to teach properly. We're not doing it. We have to do it for future, for ourselves and for future generations. And I'm gonna give you an example to tell you my story. That wasn't my story. That was the precursor to my story. I watched an African American, and he may not be African American. He may have been, I think he's African American though. I watched this guy, this brother, in a predominantly Arab masjid. I watched him, and I'm gonna be honest, I saw him for years. He was like a servant. He was like a servant to the Arabs. Cleaning up in the mosque, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? He elevates to a translator, and he's a good translator. May Allah reward him. Jazakallahu khairan. He's a good translator. And I was watching this brother, and I was like, and I know the story, right? And I'm watching this brother, and I'm saying, if he could be a man, listen what I said, if he could be a man with his knowledge and went to his people, he could do wonders. But notice the condition I put. Remember we talk about Shurut and Arkan and Mubtilaat? Let's make this figurative. If he filled the Shurut of manhood, meaning he knew what he had to do for his people, he fulfilled that condition, and he didn't allow anyone else to prevent him from doing that. I have an obligation, I learned I must go teach my people because I know no one else is going to do it. In fact, they're going to subjugate my people, not empower them. I know that. That's a man. A man can recognize this stuff, right? If he fulfilled the conditions of manhood with his abilities, he could go to his people and he could teach them and he can educate them to his level. But guess what? He won't get the opportunity to do that. Why? Because he's under the thumb of someone else who's going to tell him that's not what we do. And don't do this and don't do that. And his people will be drowning with Wahhabism, and he's right in the area where he could help the people. But he won't. Seriously. And because of that, even if he went to his people, they're not going to listen to him. Why? Because you are a slave of someone else. You can't even make a decision. And you telling us to go to people who don't care about us. And no man is going to do that. So even with your knowledge, you've been nullified. If you do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not talking racist stuff, seriously. I'm just talking about hardcore reality. Real reality. It hurts. I know for me it hurts. It hurts. It hurts so bad to watch my people for decades not learn their religion because we're not doing what we got to do. It hurts to my core. It hurts because we have the availability, but we got to do the work. But I don't quit. I don't say, and that's why I do what I do. Because I don't believe I'm qualified myself. I don't. But I understand that this is a fard Kifaayah. It is a communal obligation. If somebody don't do what I'm doing, if enough of us don't do what I'm doing, we all sinful. We got to do it. And we need more qualified. But we need to take our resources and we need to stick together. And we need to build. Seriously. I'm watching everyone else build and we stay in the same position. Not because we can't build. We refuse to build. There's a big difference. Not because you cannot do it. You refuse to do it. You refuse to give your resources. You refuse to support your teachers. You refuse to point your students of knowledge. We are too selfish. We must stop that. And I know we've been burned a lot. I understand that. I understand we've been burnt a lot. But let me tell you something. No one who is successful hasn't tasted a whole lot of failure. No one who is successful has not tasted a whole lot of failure. It wasn't always like this. I didn't have a big masjid before. I didn't have all these resources. Sometimes we used to teach. Literally, we used to teach literally in houses, in backyards, in little rooms in the community centers, outside. I remember those days. And some people who was with me remember. I remember in the days having lessons in the prison yard because the Wahhabis blocked us from the chapel. We would be in the yard and it only could be a few people, 3 or 4 people walking together. So we would have a group here, group here, group here, group here, and we would be teaching the knowledge. I remember those days. So it wasn't always easy. I remember those days. I wasn't always in the position I'm in. This came after a lot of struggle. a lot of struggle, a lot of difficulty. And don't think it's easy today. It's much easier. SubhanAllah. Sometimes I am ashamed of myself that I've got so lazy, right? But I remember when it wasn't easy. I remember that. So what I'm saying to you is please, 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 please support these efforts. They're for you. They're for your children. They're for your grandchildren. And you got many people in here. They'll tell you. This has been decades of doing this work. Right? Decades. Not week, 2 weeks, no. But before you knew anything about what we're doing. Decades of work. Decades of on the ground teaching the knowledge. But now we're in a better position. Let's use it. We have a lot, too much. But we got to support our efforts. Because I was talking, and I'm sorry, I'm going to close out. But these are important things. I must say them. You know, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the average lifespan of his nation is between 60 and 70 years. The nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we look at that, we can divide our lives into basically 3 stages. The first 20 years, we're dependent on others, seeking knowledge, being raised by your parents, trying to reach adulthood. The next 20 years, or you could take it 25 years, from 10 to 25. Then from 25 to 50, we're in working and taking care of dependents and building a future, right? From 50 to 75, we should be preparing for meeting Allah. We shouldn't still be in the struggle like that. That should be the next generation. So if we're still 50 and over and still doing the work like we 20, 25 and 30 and 35 and 40, we got to change that. At 50, you should be working towards the akhirah, ibadah, guiding, helping the next generation be successful. That's what you should be doing with your wealth and with your time and your energy, training the next generation. Right? Not still building. That's backwards. Your lifespan doesn't allow you to keep passing that on for generation to generation. The Imam, the Sheikh should be 20, 25, at least 30 at max. And we should be advising him and mentoring him and guiding him and her among the men and the women. Our youth should be teaching, not us. We should be guiding, giving classes, giving lectures, but the ones who are running everything should be the youth. But they're not prepared because we didn't prepare them. And we got to change that. By the time a child is 25 years old, if he's a student of knowledge, he should be a scholar by now. He should be fluent in the Islamic sciences. And he should be ready to teach, or she should be ready to teach, boys and girls. We got to start building. And we can't build all over the place. We got to find someone we trust, and we got to stick and support that till it's built. And then we got to duplicate that process around the country, right? Seriously, we can do it. There's enough of us here that if everyone, I saw a brother put on his Facebook, and I looked at him and I said, may Allah help you. Right now, watching this program, it's been all this time, we got 75 people in this class, which is amazing. Every day there's these numbers. And may Allah reward you for sticking through it, because you are amazing. every single day for all this time, no miss. But if all of you who can just gave $10 a week, which is not even a cup of coffee a day, well, at least not the kind I drink. I can't drink no coffee since this COVID stuff. But if you just gave $10, that's a salary for 2 teachers. That's a salary for 2 teachers. And it could be a salary for 2 teachers and possibly paying for educating 2 serious students. That's easy. But we don't, and guess what? Now you got more teachers. Now you're preparing. It can be done. And that's easy way. Everyone doing a little. What about those who are in a much better position? If you did a little more regularly, you could produce that. Seriously. So just think about it. Just something to think about, right? If we're going to have sustainable Islamic learning and stop relying on everybody else, we got to do the work. It's going to take us to support it. No one else is going to do it. No one's going to do it. Trust me. No one's going to. They haven't done it this far, and they're not going to do it in the future. So may Allah make it easy. Barakallahu fikum. Jazakumullahu khaira. Yeah, this is true. This is true. This is true. But let's change it. This is true. I'm talking about this one. I don't mean to put Sister Nora out there, but that's what I was saying. This is true. Let's fix it. Find someone you trust and work with them, right? And help them build. And I'm telling you, you got a lot of guys who knew me for decades, men and women on this. You got people I'm serious about this. This is my life. I'm hoping I get 25 more years. May Allah give it to me. And in 25 years, I'm hoping in the next 10, I'm not even looking 25. In the next 10, I should be fully replaced. And we already put in the work. But we got a lot more to do. But I should just come give my lectures, and that's it. I'm doing something else. Helping future generations, right? You know, honestly, I don't have that much time. I know I don't, right? But we got to make a next generation that are strong, Ahl Sunnah, not compromising their principles. It takes time. So find people you can work with, and let's do the work. We can do it. Trust me. We've seen what we can do, but we just got to be committed, and we got to love one another. We got to trust one another. We got to build together. We can do it. Okay, tomorrow morning. No, today's Sunday. What's today? Sunday? Sunday. Tomorrow morning, one of my student teachers, mashallah, may Allah reward him. He's the brother of Sayyid Abdul Rahman, the one who taught the class before me this morning. His brother, he's working on his master's degree at Al-Azhar University in Egypt. He's going to be going over with me. He's going to, because he's not that great in English. So we're going to start this book tomorrow morning. He's going to be reading in Arabic, and I'm going to summarize the text in English. So tomorrow morning at 6:15, we're starting this book. It is also available. It'll be every Monday. We'll start this book. So now we got, and next Friday, we'll start Al-Adhkar, the English translation of Adhkar at 6:15. So Friday morning at 6:15, we'll read Al-Adhkar before Post-Fajr reflections in English. Saturday morning, we read Adhkar of the Nawawi in Arabic with explanation, with brief before the Fajr reflections. Sunday, Sayyidi al-Sheikh Abdul Rahman is doing Risal Jamia. He just finished Zakat. He's going to start Hajj. And his brother, Sayyidi Sheikh Abdul Aziz, is going to be doing the Arabic of this summary of Imam al-Ghazali, which is this book. This is the Arabic version of this book. And I'm going to make notes and explain like we're doing the Adhkar, inshallah. So he's in Egypt. So inshallah, we hope all the internet things works. And inshallah, we'll add another class. So we're ready to work. We just need your support and your help, and we can build more. We have the people. We just need your support. Barakallahu fikum. I'll answer your questions tomorrow, so write them down. And before we start the class, put your questions that you had today up. So tomorrow, before I start the Post-Fajr, I'll take 10, 15 minutes to answer your questions. So whatever questions you had today, please preserve them for tomorrow morning and ask them first. Inshallah, we're going to work on that today, and we'll have that schedule up tomorrow, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Jazakumullahu khaira wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. May Allah reward you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.